Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for this tour of the EdData website. I want to take a quick moment to introduce my colleagues who are here with me. We have Amy Fong, Gurpreet Mungat, Samar Dawood, all of whom are with FICMAT-CSIS. We have Randy Bonnell, who represents both the California Department of Education and FICMAT-CSIS. And then we have Andrew Reed, Alex Montero, and I'm Smita Patel, and we're with EdSource. EdData is a partnership of the California Department of Education, FICMAT-CSIS, and EdSource. Our sole mission is to make California K-12 public school data, especially financial data, easy to use and access for as wide an audience as possible. All the data on the site are free. We have no commercial or advocacy interests of any kind. Over the next hour, we'll walk you through the data and functionality in EdData. Let's start by looking at the homepage and the different ways you can move around on EdData. Up in this upper right corner here, you have a search field, and you can type in a school name or a keyword. So for example, if I was looking for Surprise Valley Elementary, it's one of our favorites, you will go to the school page, and then you can click on the link here to go to the profile for Surprise Valley. At any time, you can return to the homepage by clicking the EdData logo in the upper left corner. Below the search box, we have another menu. This shows you each level of data that we offer and the data that is available within that level. So for example, at the district level, we have student demographics, performance, college career readiness, suspension, expulsion, chronic absenteeism, staff and teacher salary data, local revenue elections data, finance comparison. So it gives you a sense of all the different information. In the help menu, we also have a link to articles and explanations about the data. In the middle here, we have our marquee where we feature new data. The latest release here were the 1920 school finance report. So this tells you more about it and how to get to the data. Below that, we have what we call the red menu. And this is how you can navigate to a school or district by selecting or typing in. You can type in the name if you want. The county, the district, and the school. You do have to press the go button to get to a district from there. Below that, we have some articles. This new one, EdData, will tell you about the latest information and how to get to it, any caveats, anything you should know about the data. We have some explanations, which can be handy when you're trying to understand what the data are saying or not saying. At the bottom of the page in the footer, we have a section that talks a little more about EdData. We have a recently viewed section, which provides shortcuts for getting back to content you may have viewed recently. So for example, if you wanted to go to Elk Grove, which is a district I was looking at earlier, I could click on that and get to it from here. And then we do use cookies for the navigation on the site. It's the way the site keeps you in the same district or school that you're looking at rather than having you to, bounce around all the time. We do not track you. We do not sell the information from the cookies. It's only used to provide effective navigation for you. In the right side of the footer, we have the subscribe option. If you want to sign up for emails, you can be the first to know when we release new data on the site. And if you have questions about the data, you can contact us through the contact section. So now let's go to a school district. The first data, the biggest data release right now is the financial data, the 2019 financial data. And the most detailed financial data are available at the district level. So I want to go over there. So there, as I mentioned, there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can go to the district and click the financial data tab, or you can come up here to the district and click finance, and it'll take you in. So now we're looking at Elk Grove Unified. We have some basic information up here for the district, and then we have our financial data. financial data section has 4 subsections within it: revenues and expenditures, general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and general fund other financing sources, uses, and contributions. I'm going to do a quick pass through of these sections and show you some of the features and different ways to view the data. If you'd like a more detailed walkthrough of the financial reports, and I would recommend it, our colleague Christine Davis of the California Department of Education School Fiscal Services Division had done a webinar for us a couple of years ago, and she talks in much more depth about the different reports and what they mean. So I would encourage you to check it out. We'll share that link in the chat with you. So starting with revenues and expenditures, this provides an overview and it shows you the various funds. Most of the reports on Ed Data, the financial reports, focus on general funds. But over here, you can see the different funds that are available. On Ed Data in the financial reports, anytime you see text that is blue, you can click on it to expand for more detail. So here you can see that under total unrestricted resources, you've got funds under unrestricted, funds from the state lottery, and then the education protection account. And if you wanted to see even further detail, you could click here, and this shows you more about where the money is coming from. So just scroll down so you can see the different sections there. The next section is general fund revenues. And this provides the information by object code. It shows the primary sources of funding for this district. And here you can see that it's LCFF sources. That refers to the local control funding formula. And it shows the breakdown of how much comes from state aid and the principal apportionment and how much comes from other sources. You can also click this object code section for more detailed information of the funding. Over here, we have the option to download the data in Excel. So the way this button works is that whatever you're seeing in the table is what it would download. So if you wanted all the information from the expanded table, you would expand it first and then download. You can also create a link to share that the table, which would, you can email that to somebody and they would come to this specific spot on the site. I'm going to talk about more functionality as we continue down, but I want to move into the expenditure section. This talks about how the district spends the money that it has received. Once again, you've got the object codes that you can expand for more information. And then over here, you have graphs that you can look at to see the trends. It provides the same information as the table, but in a 5-year trend. And if you click this view table data, you can see the numbers behind the graph. Sometimes the graphs bounce around. You can also mouse over the bars in order to see the amounts. Now we have the current expense of education per ADA table here. The current expense is a calculation that the state makes every year and it is a measure of the cost of direct educational services to students. So this is a helpful measure to use when you're comparing how different districts, how much they're spending on students. And in this table, you can see that it shows you what this district spends as well as the statewide average for unified school districts or for all districts. Come down a little further, you see general fund expenditures by activity. Now, this is where you would come if you wanted to answer the question of how much does this district spend on instruction versus other expenses. And again, it might be easier to look at this in the graph. So you can come down here, you can see that instruction. And you might want, this button allows you to toggle between counts and percentages. So if you go over to percentages, you can say it's approximately 65%, and then another 10% for instruction related services. So that's always been a question we get on Ed Data and hopefully this graph makes it easy to see. Going back to our data table, just want to again show how you can expand the function code. And then over here, whenever you see a little orange question mark, you can click it and it opens up our California School Accounting Manual Glossary and gives you the definition. So if you're wondering, okay, so what is included in instruction, you've got this handy reference right here. Another reminder that if you see any text in blue, it means there's more information buried inside. So again, if you want to look at how the instruction funds were spent, you can expand, and then it shows you how much was spent on salaries, benefits, books and supplies, etc. The next section shows general fund and charter school costs reported by goal codes. And I should just mention that we don't have data for charter schools, unfortunately. We don't have financial data. We do have all the other data because charter schools report their financial data in a number of different formats, and it just was not possible to make them consistent enough for us to show on-ed data. So currently we only have school district data. County offices of education are treated on-ed data like school districts, and their reports are similar. And so if you wanted to look at County Office of Education's financial reports, you could do that by finding them on-ed data. So once again, you can expand the goals and see the funding. You can get the definitions. You can click here for more information on the expenditures. Then the next section down here is other financing sources, uses, and contributions. And a lot of this is transfers. I think I neglected to mention, but at the very bottom of the revenues and expenditures, you also have the year-end summary table, which might be useful. Just quickly want to mention that on every report, you will see this year slider. It allows you to change between years. So if you want to look at data for prior years, and we go back to 2009-10 on the EdData website, the latest data being the 2019-20 data. Right, so now I'm going to take a shortcut and go over to
Smita.
Go ahead, Gurpreet.
Sorry to interrupt. We do have one question. Okay. So what would be the best use for looking at the financial data? How would that be used?
How would you use it? Data? So yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, the reason EdData was created, because as you all know, a great deal of K-12 data are already available in other places, and especially on the California Department of Education's DataQuest website. But there was this need for school districts and for community members and researchers and all to be able to look at the financial data, which are just huge, huge data files, and not everybody has the access to the database software and the knowledge and comfort of being able to download and analyze massive databases and data sets like that. So what we're trying to do here is make the data accessible to you. And in terms of how you would use it, you might be interested in looking at how your district, for example, is spending its funding. You know, you might want to look at how much it's getting compared to other districts. And we will look at in a few minutes at the comparisons where you can look at multiple districts at the same time. But it just gives you the ability to sort of understand where funds are going. We often hear people say that, you know, school districts spend all their money on administration and not on instruction. But as you could see from that graph we looked at earlier, the district actually spends most of its money on instruction and instruction-related costs. Now, of course, schools and education are a personnel-based business. So one of the biggest costs are going to be salaries, because it's the teachers that make schools happen. So it's hard to, I can't really say how any one person would use it, but what our goal is to put the information out there, to put the context out there. So do refer to the sections below, the little notes under the tables, because they try to give you a little bit more context of what the information is telling you. And hopefully it can help you ask better questions. We don't promise to have all the answers on Ed Data, but we want to give you the information so you can ask questions of your school districts. So again, you might want to know why, why is this district spending less than the statewide average on its per student expenses? And another note I forgot to mention here is that financial calculations for, the apportionments of funding are based on average daily attendance, not enrollment. And so all the graphs that you'll see, all the charts and tables will be talking in terms of dollars per student average daily attendance. And so again, here you can see that there's like the overall expenditures, but then it shows how much it's spending per student on an ADA basis, and then how that compares to other unified school districts. I don't know if that answered the question. I hope it did. Happy to discuss this further offline. Any other questions?
Yes, so Glenn is asking, does the CD have financial data for charter schools?
So financial data for charter schools is available on the CDE website, where you can download the financial data, in data files. Unfortunately, we don't have it in the Ed Data reports. It's something I hope we can do at some point. And I know there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes on the whole reporting system used for financial data. So hopefully at some point, but I don't have any kind of date that I know of for that.
Is there a financial category that tracks school district expenditure on priorities, for example, priority 2?
Priority 2. Okay, so I'm out of my depth here. This is something I'm happy to check with our colleagues at Fiscal Services Division. We do have, you can look at the expenditures by the object code or by the activity codes, the function codes, or by the goal codes, but I'm not sure where priority 2 would show up there after that. So maybe I can follow up with you on that separately.
Tina is asking about, are you tracking COVID funding? If so, at the district level, or do you drill down to individual school level?
Okay, so we do not have that information, and I'm not sure how that's going to be reported. That's a really good question. You're talking about the relief funding, right? That's been coming to schools for reopening and all. And I will have to ask my colleagues at the Fiscal Services Division about that, but we won't be seeing that in the 1920 financial reports at all, for sure. I'm not sure what the plan is for reporting them for the next 2 years. So I will check in and follow up with you on that. While I'm up here, I just want to point out that we have some basic information for the district. Every school or school district, as well as counties and the state, has this profile. And at the school and district level, we include information about the CDS code, the type of entity it is, grade span, enrollment, links to their websites. And we also have a list of schools that you can click. Seems to be slow for some reason, but it should show you. We'll come back to that. The schools that are in this district. Another way you could see all the schools in that district is by clicking over here. You can move between schools.
So is this AD calculated during this academic year?
So yes, and the average daily attendance for 2019-20, although there was a disruption, okay. Some kind of an issue. There was a disruption when the schools closed, of course, in tracking attendance, but for the most part, the ADA for the 2019-20 year was considered to be fairly stable. And so it is collected during the school year. And for this current year, the 2021 school year, they're actually going to use the prior year's ADA just because there was so much disruption with schools being out and difficulty of being able to keep attendance while students were over Zoom. So they wanted to hold schools harmless and not have that affect their funding. So I think for next year's apportionments, the ADA is being handled differently.
Right, Samantha, in statute for 2021, the ADA portion of funding was held constant from 1920.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Randy, while I'm having this difficulty, could you just talk a little bit about some of the data collection changes? Like I know we're not reporting chronic absenteeism data this year.
Sure. There was statute passed last year that basically put the California School Dashboard on hold, but required the CDE to report out on data that would have been included in the dashboard if those data were determined to be reliable and valid. So it actually says that in statute. And so what that means is things like graduation rate, suspension rate, chronic absenteeism rate, those sort of things are included as indicators on the dashboard. So the CDE took a look at all of those indicators, all those measures, and for graduation and suspension rate, that we ended up reporting those data out on our site, and so they're included on Ed Data as well. However, for the chronic absenteeism, given the way that those data are collected in our student level system, CalPADS, and the differences in which LEAs reported the data, it made the data difficult to compare, and so we ended up not publicly reporting those data on the CD website. So for 1920, those data will also not be included on Ed Data.
So here we are at the state level student report. And first thing you see here is how the 3 different ways that students are counted. So for example, we have census day enrollment, which is collected on the first Wednesday in October. So this is for the 2019, well, it's actually 5 years ending with the 2019-20 year. And then you have cumulative enrollment, which is a relatively new enrollment count, and that CDE uses to help calculate rates of absenteeism as well as suspension and expulsion rates. And this cumulative enrollment is collected at the end of the year. And then you have the average daily attendance, which we were talking about earlier. And that is actually looking at the days that students attended divided by the number of days taught. So they're all used for different functions. They should not be interchanged, but we wanted to include them all in Ed Data so you could have these different ways of looking at the information. While we're here, I want to take a quick minute to show you some of the functionality ways you can go in deeper for more information. So this menu here at the top allows you to go in and look at the information for different student groups. So for example, if you want to look at enrollment by ethnicity, you can do that by coming here. Again, you can toggle between counts and percentages by clicking that link up there. You can expand the table data so that you can see the actual number of students or the percentage, depending on what you've chosen up here. And then here we've got a share functionality that allows you to share the graph on Google or Facebook. You can click this to generate a link if you want to link someone directly to the graph. And You can also print, email, or save, download into Excel. Now, there's a cool new function that is available with some of the newer downloadable data files that CDE has been developing. For example, with the cumulative enrollment, you can actually toggle between all students or data for charter school students only, or for traditional district schools only. So different people are looking for different information, and our goal on EdData is always to make it as flexible as possible. The ADA does not have drill-ins, it's only calculated at the district level. And the graph is actually only available at the state and district levels. I'm going to quickly scroll down and just show you some of the other data that are available in this section. Please feel free to jump in with questions. Randy's our expert on these data, so he can help fill us in. The unduplicated pupil count is what is used as the starting point for the local control funding formula apportionments of funding to schools. So this tells you what percentage of students in the district are considered high needs under that for the funding purposes. The free and reduced price meals, again, is another proxy used for student need. This graph shows you the number of English learners. We also have graphs that explain the English language acquisition status, so how many students have become fluent in English. This shows you how many were redesignated in that year as fluent in English. And then this graph shows you the languages spoken by the English learners. We focus on only the top 5 languages because there are just so many languages spoken in California. But if you wanted to look at all of them, just scroll down here in this note, and there's a page on DataQuest, which will show you all of the languages. Again, I want to remind folks that the chart notes are a very useful reference, so do take a look at them. We try to explain if there's something unexpected in the data, we give you a heads up about it there. Also, if you see anything in green, like our RFEP here, you can click on it and expand the glossary and get the definition for what redesignated fluent English proficient means, for example. And this glossary is available in the upper right corner of every page, so you can also just click on it directly. The source data tells you where the data come from, and most of the data, almost all of it except for the school district bond and parcel tax election data, come to us directly from the California Department of Education's Data Reporting Office. And most of it, I think, Randy, most if not all of it are collected through CalPADS now, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So then we have foster youth counts. The Ethnic Diversity Index is something that's unique to EdData. It was a calculation we created to help show how diverse a school's population is, because you might have a school that has 80% of students who are not white, but they're all of the same group. So then that is not necessarily the same thing as a diverse population where you're serving lots of different languages and cultural backgrounds. And so this was something that we felt there was a need to be able to measure. So if you have a school where everybody is from exactly the same population, then the index would be 0. And if you had a school where every student was from a different background, it would be 100. At the state level, as well as the county and district level, we also have a graph that shows you schools by type. It's a useful resource if you want to know, for example, how many high schools there are in California. EdData can tell you that. Also K-12 middle schools. We have a similar graph that shows you districts by type. And then we have charter schools, which shows you the count of charter schools in the 1920 year, and then the enrollment in charter schools in these 5 years. And as well as only at the state level, we have a private schools graph just showing you the number and enrollment of private schools. Any questions about the student demographic data?
Smita, can you demo the toggle button of the numbers and percentages?
Yes, let's go back to that here. So not every graph has it, but if you're in a graph that has multiple groups, then you can, it's right at the top. You can see the number and the percentage, and I'll expand the table so you can see how it affects it. So right now it says number of students, and you can see these are counts. If I click on percent, it changes it to percent, and then you can see the percentages down here. Okay, anything else for that section? Go into the performance then. In this section, we have the statewide test, the Smarter Balance test for English language arts and mathematics, as well as the PE tests results. Now, last year, these were not administered, and so we don't have 2019-20 data. This, of course, was because of the pandemic. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but the CASP graphs are actually very rich, and they enable you to look at different ways. So you can look at the data, for example, by gender for all levels, or you can look at it for a specific level by both genders. So it allows you to slice and dice the data in different ways. Below performance, we have college and career readiness, and this is one of the new data sets we just loaded. This provides you information on the cohort graduates and dropouts, as well as the graduates who met the course requirements, the A through G courses for admission to UC or CSU. This year we added this new graph, which shows you the students in the cohort. So now you can see how many English learners were in this district's cohort. And Randy, would you be able to quickly explain cohorts?
Yeah, so the cohort graduation rate is calculated from a cohort of students who all start ninth grade for the first time in the same year. And then we follow those students for 4 years and look at the outcomes of those students at the end of 4 years. And so along the way, of course, some students transfer out of state or transfer out of country. There are legitimate reasons why we would remove students from the cohort, and then students transfer into California, into public schools and districts, and we would place them inside of a cohort based upon the year that they started ninth grade, and then track the students from that point forward. But by the time we get to the end of 4 years, we look at this cohort composition and the outcomes for all those students in order to calculate a cohort graduation rate. So basically, it's students who all started ninth grade at the same time and had the same period of time, 4 years, to complete high school.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna, let's see, hopefully my sharing is back. Yeah, that's, so this is a much cooler way of measuring, I think a more accurate way of measuring the graduation rate than what we had before, which was sort of more of a guesstimate, right, of how many students were there, because now you're actually tracking every single student through the 4 years. We do have data for ACT and AP tests. We need to update the 1920, which we're hoping to do. And the SAT test changed, and so we don't currently have updated data for that. As you know, many colleges and universities decided not to use the ACT and SAT in their admissions for the next year or two. So we're also sort of waiting to see what happens on that. Below college and career readiness, we have suspensions and expulsions. So here you can see the suspension rate, as well as suspensions by the most serious offense category. And then this has been something that has been getting a lot of attention, the number of students that are suspended for the category of defiance only, which is a little hard to define. And there is concern that it's not used in a very equitable way. And so that's something that folks have wanted to be able to look at carefully. And you can see that there's been a strong downward trend ever since the department started tracking and providing these data in the number of defiance-only suspensions. There's a caveat, of course, and you can see it quite plainly here in the graph, that because of the school closures, you should not compare this year, that 1920 suspension or expulsion rates with prior years, because there are some missing data when kids were not in school. However, Randy, if as I understand it, the data are still considered valid, right? They were still, the CD has posted them because the rest of the year's data were fine.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the data for last year, the suspension rates are lower than in previous years because students transitioned to distance learning, and so not often suspended in a distance learning environment, but still the cumulative enrollment is comparable, and although the counts are lower for suspensions, we still opted to release those data with the understanding that things have changed after schools transition to distance learning. But the data were collected in a consistent manner across schools and districts, and so we reported those data out.
Right. Thanks. And again, here with these data, you can once more toggle either view for all students or for only the charter school students or the traditional district school students. And then the last section here is chronic absenteeism that Randy has already talked about, which, whoops, not sure why I'm not seeing a graph there. But we don't have 1920 chronic absenteeism data, although this is an area of interest because students that miss a lot of school tend to fall behind academically. So not sure why that, oh, there they are, here we are. So again, you have the same functionality, the number % toggle, the ability to view the table data. And here's a link to that COVID-19 data reporting page that Randy had mentioned earlier. So are there any questions about any of the student data that we've been looking at?
So I think Randy is typing one of the answers. In the can you show the race ethnicity breakup of the cohorts?
Of the cohorts, yes. So let me go into college and career readiness. So did you want to look at the graduation by race ethnicity? Is that what, or did you want to look at the overall cohort? Do both. This is one of the cool things in it data. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you can also bring graphs up. So if I want to bring the graduates meeting UC CSU course requirements up, you can move it. And so we can look at that by race ethnicity as well. So was this just to know how to get to the race ethnicity? Or was there?
I think so.
Okay. And then
I think that was it. Yeah. So another question is, why was the defiance suspension rate separated?
Randy, is that something you want to?
Yeah, because I think there was public and legislative interest to see what was happening specifically with students who were suspended for defiance-related offenses, rather than having it commingled with other types of suspensions. Now, the suspension rate overall, it includes all suspensions, but again, there's public and legislative advocacy interest in seeing what was happening specifically with students suspended for defiance-related offenses. So those are also pulled out separately for that reason.
Okay. Anything more there?
So somebody's asking, actually Sandra is asking, I don't see any demographic data referencing disability status, but there is much data out there for like rate of suspension, expulsion. Why is that not captured?
So we actually, for many years, were not able to include any data on special education because it was collected in a different part or different set of data, and there were concerns about. Randy, jump in if I completely mangle the explanation here, but concerns about being able to put the data together because they were collected in different ways and in different places. But we do now have data for special education students, for students with disabilities. So for example, you can see how many students with disabilities were in the cohort. And the graduation rate is now available for students with disabilities. So we are, wherever we can find these data, we are putting them in. We have them here in the cumulative enrollment graph, but unfortunately, we're trying to get the census day enrollment from the public data files, which I know are being revised. But currently, I don't think we could get the students with disabilities counts from those public files. And so they're missing for a couple of years. Let's see, special education.
Yeah, so that's really an issue on, I think, on the CDE side. So like Smita said at the beginning of the call, it's a partnership between the Department of Education and the FICMAT and EdSource, and the CDE does make a lot of data publicly available. And as we've moved through, different data collections, we have increased the robustness of those downloadable files, which is what we really use to populate the ed data site. And the CDE is in the process of updating the census day enrollment files to make them more robust the way that we have with cumulative enrollment and other data files. And when we do that, there'll be a lot more information available in those publicly available data, and that will transition into what is displayed on ed data too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a really great partnership, and CDE's been very proactive in trying to make the data files be as useful and effective as possible for ed data also to be able to get them up quickly. All right, I'm going to jump forward because I'm noticing that we're now 12 minutes from the end of the hour here. So I want to show you that we also have staff data, and actually I'm going to jump down. I'm going to use our little shortcut here to jump over to the district level, because the district level tends to have the most data, the deepest data. So if I click on the staff tab, you can see that there's a demographics section that tells you about teachers. You can look at it by full-time equivalent, the pupil-teacher ratio, teaching experience, administrators. We do not currently have teacher staff data for 2019-20. The DataQuest website does have some classified staff data, and we'll share that link again in the chat. Another thing you'll find on ed data is teacher salary data. This is average teacher salaries, of course, not individual teacher salaries, but if you want to see how a school district compares to others or what the average salaries are, you can get that from these graphs here. If you want to see the entire salary schedule, you can click this. And as you can see, it shows you this district, and then it shows you the average for all districts and the average for other districts of the same type. So you can sort of get a sense of how this district falls in that range. So a lot of people ask us how you can see data from all these different sections in one place, or how you can view data for multiple entities in one place. And that's what our comparisons are really wonderful for. So let me take you over there. Now, there are a couple of ways to get to comparisons. You can use this menu at the top, the districts or school comparisons. Or if you're looking at a district and you want to keep it front and center in your comparison, then you can use this cool shortcut. And when you click on that, what happens is you get taken over to comparisons, but the district you're reviewing is saved here. So we've got Elk Grove Unified with a little thumbtack signifying that it's pinned there. That means if I advance to the next page, Elk Grove will still remain here front front and center. Up here, you get a count of how many districts were results were returned for your comparisons. Before I get deeper into the comparisons, I just want to mention a couple of things that the comparisons let you do. One thing is, as I said, you can look at multiple districts, and you can look at different data points. You can look at demographics, performance, finance, all in one place. You can also export the data into Excel, and you can share the comparison. Another thing you can do with the comparisons is compare schools or districts on the data elements you select. So you could, for example, pin districts. So if you wanted to compare Elk Grove to San Francisco Unified, you can also pin San Francisco. I believe you can pin up to 5 districts. And then you can decide what you want to look at. So do you want to look at their enrollment? Do you want to look at how much they spend on educating their students? Sorry for bouncing around. You can see there's quite a difference between the 2 districts in that. To unpin a district, you can just click that thumbtack there. Another thing you can do is you can find schools and districts that are similar to yours. So for example, if you want to know what other districts are about the same size as Elk Grove, you can come here and look for, let's see, it's 64,000. So let's say we want to find 64,000 to 66,000. And this will, I guess there's just one. So let's say 75. So then it'll show you the districts that are, that match that criteria. You can refresh your search anytime you want to just get back to what you had. I mean, refresh the page if you want to clear the selections. Another thing you can do is create lists. So if you want to know what's the largest or the smallest school district. So of course, because Elk Grove is pinned, it's remaining here, but the largest is Los Angeles Unified, obviously followed by San Diego. And you can view schools or districts within a specific area. So for example, if we only want to look at the districts in Sacramento, we can narrow our results and we only see the 14 districts in that area. Also, you can have more than one county. You can choose to look at districts in 5 counties or 10 counties if you wish. Okay, so just to mention here, we've got, right now we're in district comparisons. You can also look at school comparisons, and you can use this year slider to move between years. So for example, when we load 2021 enrollment data, we won't have the financial data for some time after the enrollment data become available. So you would probably want to move back to the 1920 year if you want to do a comparison that includes financial data. Okay, so to see all the different data elements that are available here, you can click this little menu button here, and you can see that we've got summary data, there's student demographic data, performance data, college and career readiness, lots and lots of data. And then you come down here, there's all the financial data. And if you click all available data elements, you can see even more. And you can search for it up here if you're not finding what you're looking for. The sections down here are organized similar to our graphs and to our report pages. So hopefully it's easy to find. And here in finance, by default, we show you that current expense of education number, but you can also click here to look at total expenditures or total expenditures per student, total revenues, total, and I should clarify that's general fund revenues per student. And you have something similar with the school. Just want to make sure that you take a look at make sure you click on this ellipses, these little 3 dots here, because they show you the other options in this section. So for example, if you're looking at schools and you want to know which ones are charter schools, you can pick the charter school, yes, no, and it'll tell you. You can also select by school type. So if you only want to look at high schools, you can narrow your selection by that. Okay, we're 4 minutes away. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to stay on longer if folks have questions. I know some of our team, including Randy, might need to jump off. So are there any questions for Randy before we?
Randy already jumped off.
Oh, did he already have to jump off? Okay, so if there are any questions for Randy, please feel free to submit them and we will check in with him afterwards and follow up with you on those questions. I know I've been moving really fast and I apologize for that. Are there any questions about what I've gone through so far?
So I think there is a question that's coming up again and again is about the basic aid. Is there a way to filter the school comparison funding such as basic aid?
So basic aid is one of those really complicated things, and districts actually move in and out of basic aid status constantly. So it's difficult to have, and basic aid, which is also known as excess revenue, just for folks who are not familiar with the term, refers to those districts who get more money from their local property taxes than they would from the state. So they're allowed to keep that extra money. And they're known as basic aid districts, and they're usually just around, I think, under 200 of them. There is no way in the financial reports to identify a basic aid district. The CDE does have a page that where you can find that information, and I'd be happy to share that with you afterwards. I don't have it handy. It takes a little bit of digging to get to it. We can find it and share it with you afterwards. And maybe what we'll do is post some of these questions and the answers to them along with the video of this webinar when we get that done. Other questions?
Yep, I think somebody's asking about the staff contacts, like administrative staff, buyers, procurement, etc.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we do not have detailed staff contact. What we do have is the information that, you know, for the main administrator, and you can go to the website to get additional information on the staff at the district or high school, but we don't have detailed staff contact. That wasn't kind of part of our brief. Our focus has always been on trying to just keep up with all the data loads and provide it in a way that's as useful as, you know, and user-friendly as possible. So I'll take a quick minute. I know everyone's got a lot going on here. Back in the comparisons, if you lose your comparison, as I may have, if you've made a lot of selections, you can come back here and click on it, and it should take you back to the comparison you had created with different, you know, whatever filters you had selected. I just wanted to show you how rich the filters are. For example, if you wanted to look at enrollment by ethnicity, you can come up here and you can look at ethnicity, race, percentage, and then it shows you all the different ethnicities, but you can also filter that. So if you're looking for districts that have a certain proportion of Asian students, for example, or for schools, you could say, okay, so show me schools that have at least 20% Asian students. And I know we don't have a lot of Native American students, and and so you can also reduce groups that you know, are not looking at, just to make a little more space there. You also have the option to show the comparisons for the county, district, and state. So just for the purpose of this, I'm going to remove all the categories except the Asian students. And then, oops, I clicked too soon. And here you'll see it's showing what the statewide percentage of Asian students is. versus at the school what the percentage of students is. And then you can use this button here to sort, and it goes from lowest to highest. It toggles. Anything else that I should be showing, Gurpreet?
I think that's good.
Yeah, I know this is a ton of information to keep up with, and I thank you all for being here and being patient. Please reach out. We love Ed Data. It's a true labor of love. We are always happy to hear from folks using the site, and always happy to try and help you find data. If we don't have it on Ed Data, we'll do our best to direct you to other sources. Just remember to click on these 3 dots so you can see all the other options you have for your comparisons. One caveat about comparisons is that because of the amount of data, you can only load or download a maximum of 3,500 entities at a time, and even that might be too much for your browser. So it's a good idea to narrow it as much as possible. So for example, narrow it by school type to just the schools you want to look at. You can narrow it by enrollment. You can narrow it by county. You can narrow it if you only want to look at schools in a certain district, type in the district name here and it'll narrow it down by that. Or you can narrow it the way we looked at, you could narrow it by students, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards in CASP. There are lots of different ways. We have a little help article for the comparisons, which you can get to from here. And if that doesn't answer your questions, then drop us an email from the contact tab down here, and we will do our best to help walk you through it. So it's 1:03.
So there's another question, Smita.
Go ahead.
Can you answer the last question?
Absolutely.
So does comparison webpage has CASP math score scale per school or district? I think there is.
The CASP. Sorry, what?
So that's I think the one that is by default, the CASP math.
Math or
score.
exceeded. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what we did here, so there's a challenge because as you know, the Smarter Balanced test results are provided in these 4 different categories. There's met or exceeded, and then there is, I'm forgetting the names of the other 2. Sorry, let me get into the CASP chart so we know what we're looking at. So you have the standard exceeded, standard met. So those are these 2 standards, and then nearly met and not met. And so it's hard to compare if you're looking at all 4 of those. And so what we've done is we've distilled it down to the percent of students who have met or exceeded standards. Now, of course, it's because there's no data for this year, it's showing NA, but if we go back a year, it will show you how many students met or exceeded the standards there. And then you can also get it by level. So if you want to look at math results by level, you can add that in there, and then it'll show you this is how many students exceeded, or what percentage. This is what percentage met those standards, and then nearly met, and then did not meet. Did that answer the question there, Gurpreet?
I think they're asking about scale scores.
The scale scores.
The quantitative value, not the qualitative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't have the scale scores here. Yeah, we don't. We don't. That's something we've been talking about, but we haven't figured out quite how to do it. So it's good to know that you're interested in it. And if you can, drop us a line and tell us more about what exactly you're looking for and how you would use it, so that we can add that to our discussions of how we present the data. It's a constantly evolving process. We do try. Data runs on a shoestring budget, so we can't always do things as quickly as we'd like, but we always listen and always try to think of ways to make the site better. So keep the feedback coming. Anything else? Okay, then
So
I think
another question is, can you disaggregate the students with disabilities by disability?
no, we do not have that level of detail yet on it data. The reporting, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have for many years we weren't able to include any information, and now that and Gurpreet, correct me if I'm wrong here, but now the data on disabilities has been brought into CalPADS, right? It's all been brought into one. Is that correct, or is it still in a different data system?
It is, I think.
Yeah.
It's coming
I know
into
there's a
CalPADS.
lot.
I don't know the way CD reports it. The way CD reports it's kind of different.
Okay, so it's still a little bit different, but I know there are a lot of efforts behind the scenes to try and make the data more uniform. And so we'll certainly try to add more data for students with disabilities as it becomes available. But right now it's not been available in a format that we would be able to use on the data. Anything else?
That's it.
I want to thank all of you for being here and thank our team for all your help. I apologize for the technical problems we ran into, but we're thrilled that you're interested in the data. We look forward to help, answering any more questions you have, and we appreciate your time this afternoon. So take care, stay safe, have a great rest of your afternoon, and reach out anytime. Thank you so much.